How is the Chinese Communist government relates to the Afghanistan situation? How should the U.S. deal with the Chinese Communist Party? I will next bring to you some insights from a person who did a lot of business in China, whose name is Elmer Yuen. He's an entrepreneur, investor, and a political commentator from Hong Kong. Yuen was born in China, Shanghai, and joined his father in Hong Kong in 1956 when he was only 7 years old. His father fled to Hong Kong after the communist authorities stripped him of his assets. His mother, Nancy Yuen, who stayed behind, was eventually imprisoned by the CCP for 20 years because of her religious belief. Elmer Yuen became a savvy entrepreneur and a businessman. One of the companies that he founded, called TeleArt Inc., became the first Hong Kong-owned electronics companies listed on NASDAQ. Besides Hong Kong, China, he also spent a lot of time in the United States and Japan. Elmer Yuen is also an early investor in mainland China in early 1980. During the anti-extradition law amendment bill movement in Hong Kong in 2020, Elmer Yuen started to speak out against the CCP and eventually came to Washington, D.C. to lobby the Congress for their support of Hong Kong freedom. Because of his experiences in doing business in China and elsewhere, he developed a lot of insights of the Chinese Communist government. Actually, Elmer Yuen also knows quite a lot about Afghanistan and believes that the CCP is pretty much benefiting from Afghanistan and behind a lot of things there.
I was working very closely with China in acquiring natural resource from Afghanistan. Afghanistan is very mountainous, but they have very, very rich minerals,
right.
Copper, iron, and rare earth. And rare earth. The problem with American, they have spent so much money in Afghanistan and in Iraq, but they think it's too difficult to extract the natural resource. You know, right now in US, they just have to make a phone call. They get trillions of dollars. Yeah. Just raise their hand, you get trillions of dollars. Nobody's working anymore. It's very tough. But the Chinese, they are getting all the benefit. US is spending all that money to get rid of the dictators. And then the Chinese company moved in, took over all the natural resource.
What were the years you worked there?
About 10 years ago.
10 years ago,
yes,
okay.
Yes. And Afghanistan, 15 years ago, 10 years, I've been working, and I would negotiate with them on the natural resource.
I see.
And then sell some of the minings to the Chinese companies. So I'm fully aware of what's happening. The U.S., actually, the command center, the military command center is right below the airport. So this is why they are keeping the airport right now, all right? And ask for everybody to come in, because that's I think in the end, they have to blow it up, because it's the whole underground facility is the U.S. command. And, but it's a very unfortunate situation. I think, to be honest with you, I like to criticize Washington. The Iraqi and the Afghanistan occupation are really business. It's a business of 20 years, right? They spent over $2 trillion Afghanistan, and maybe twice as much in Iraq. Somebody is making tons of money. Every year, at least half of the money goes to line somebody's pocket, including the Afghans, all right? So they've been making lots of money. It's a business, they want to keep on going. And Trump wants to stop it, all right, wants to stop it under certain conditions. And Biden probably got the wrong advice from this national security advisor, Sullivan, on that. Ignore the advice from the military and the State Department and the CIA, and simply went ahead without, such a terrible way of leaving Afghanistan, you know, and all that weapon. No, when I was working with China, I've been independent for the last 15 months. When I was working in China, over many, many years, for 10 years, Chinese wants to buy the parts for the Black Hawk helicopter, because US refused to give them parts. And in China, especially in the Tibetan plateau, they need Black Hawk capability to be able to fly the helicopter because the engine, everything is better, much better than the Soviet or the Chinese. US never gave them parts. So I told them it's not possible. This time, they got I think,
for free?
over 100 Black Hawk.
Wow.
Because Afghanistan is so mountainous, so they have to use helicopter. There's no landing pad or anything.
Right.
So that probably is the most concentrated Black Hawk ended up in Chinese hands. Black Hawks, drones, and then a lot of software and communication gears, and of course weapons. It's ridiculous.
Wow.
I mean, it's a huge crime. I think it's far from over. I think the Congress is almost going to the degree of impeachment. It's so serious. And people are dying, and people are rushing to the airport. Not only civilian, and we just heard the 12 military servicemen were blown up, died. And I think a lot more, because I believe still over 150,000 pro-American Afghan citizens wants to leave. But the deadline is the 31st of August. So there's no way. They can probably move out another 50,000. There will still be 100,000 left over. And it's a tragedy of tremendous proportion. I think this may bring the downfall of the Biden administration. Of course, they have 4 years. So he probably will be replaced. And I think even the Democrats understand the situation is too serious. If you continue to do that, the military, you will lose leadership in the whole military. I mean, these 12 guys are military. Died for no reason at all. I mean, during Trump's administration, for 18 months, nobody died. Right. Not even one died. Right? And with only 2,500 people, soldiers there. And now they send in 6,000 more, meaning about 8,000. Still cannot keep the situation under control. This is Chinese communists behind.
Yeah, explain more.
Tibetan.
Yeah.
Chinese understand. Since Biden became the president, you remember, there was a lecturing in Alaska. Remember?
Right,
lecturing.
18 minutes.
right. Later on, the lecturing in Tianjin, right? Why lecturing? Meaning you are weak, then I lecture. They would never lecture Pompeo or Trump. That shows, that reflects how they look at you, how they look at Biden, how the Chinese communists analyze Biden, whether he can fight back or not, right? Then they've decided to do Burma, all right, to take over Burma. Nothing. Right? Hong Kong, not much, only some sanctions, but nothing in real action. And then Burma, nothing. And now they know that if they do this, speed up this occupation of Afghanistan, then you are not going to do anything either.
And what does
and the Chinese gave them
Communist
all the support. You see, the weapon to the Taliban came from Pakistan, which is very close. And the Taliban go back and forth. So all they need is a phone call. Give them all the weapons you need, and then we need to meet certain deadline. You see, it's very coincidental. This is almost the same time as the COVID report coming out. They want to distract all the attention on the COVID report to the Afghan affair. You see that? So today, if you read all the major medias, they don't mention too much about the report. They touch on it, but all the focus is on the Afghan pull out. So it's a very clever. People must understand. Today, most events happening have China's signature behind. Right? It's not by coincidence. Without support from China, nothing will happen. Today, the whole Venezuela survival is because of China. They owe China almost a $0.1 trillion, Venezuela. And the Chinese would send them all the military through the Cubans. They send the Cuban soldiers in and protect Maduro's regime. That's why it will still stay. still survive. So lots of things the Chinese are behind because they make too much money from the United States in trade, in IPOs, in bonds. They've been making too much money. And all that money didn't go to the Chinese people or the Chinese company. It went to the Chinese state. And the Chinese company and people got the RMB. They didn't get the real money. The RMB is really like a chips. You know? So they have all that money. Total, they have net about $20 trillion US over the last 25, 30 years. And that money, they've been lending to everybody in the world. And they became the biggest creditor in the world.
So what's the real purpose that CCP became the largest creditor in the world?
You'd have to thank US. That's the problem. And people here are still sleeping. The Wall Street is making small money compared to the big money the Chinese got.
In China, they always say, oh, we have 1.4 billion people's market.
Yeah, even that population. This is funny. In the last few months, because Chinese have to vaccinate all their people, they have made a target to vaccinate 1.1 billion people. And they claim they have 1.4 billion population, right? Mm-hmm. So it sounds reasonable. All of a sudden, in the last 3 weeks, they could not find enough people to vaccinate. And they were stealing, using truck to steal people from the next district to get vaccination.
So they compete.
In order to complete the target.
The quota.
The quota. Every district have a quota, right? According to your population report, you have so many. So actually, they don't have 1.1 billion people, first of all. And the Japanese and the Russian have a report, according to salt, the eating salt, table salt, and according to the supply of grain, that China probably only has 0.8 billion people, 800 million people. So we don't know what to believe.
Yeah.
But the vaccination problem is obvious. They have less than 1.1 billion people, which means they are not number one. Number one would be India. India have no reason to lie. So they have India has 1.2 to 1.3 billion. Secondly, I think the number is between 800 million and 1.1 billion, somewhere in between. We never know. We never know. But then you notice suddenly they stopped this one-child policy.
Right, not 3 children.
Unlimited. They're going to remove all the pills and all the contraceptive things from the drugstores.
Right.
Because suddenly they found they have such shortage of population. They have to make it up, go back to the reality. So this is all wedged together. It's the story. They need more population to claim they are the biggest country in the world, and then the highest GDP, and so on and so forth. This gave them a special status under many, many United Nations organizations. Right? But the reality, I believe, somewhere maybe about under 1 billion people. And India is coming up in terms of population, way over. And their GDP is totally untrue, the Chinese GDP. And every
so what
year,
can be trusted in China?
Nothing, nothing. Even the whole government, I've been preaching to the European Union. China is not a government. Every government official behind them is a party secretary. So the government itself is only a facade. It's a facade. The reality, there's one party. It's the Communist Party. All the other so-called democratic parties are only for show. There are 8 democratic parties for sure. So the whole thing is the Chinese Communist Party is everything. And it's really very much operate exactly like the mafia. It's a mafia. That's why I've been lobbying in Washington to designate the CCP as a criminal organization. Its behavior, if you really take away the nation, you understand everything they do is basically criminal, all crimes. So that way you understand them better. You wouldn't do business with criminals, right? Because they never keep their promise. They don't have sense of law. They're criminals, no law, right? Today they promise Hong Kong has 50 years independence, and tomorrow they forget about it. That's the criminals' behavior. typical. You do business with the New York mafias, you don't expect them to be lawful and to keep their promise and everything. The minute they don't like you, they have power.
Yeah.
You'll be gone. So this is the problem right now. The world is dealing with China because they think there's money to be made.
Big market.
You call yourself a nation, and we treat you as a nation. We treat you with diplomacy and so on and so forth. This is totally wrong. If China,
what should be done?
They should isolate China. They should isolate China, and remove China from the international bodies. They should. If China has no communism, I can promise you, all the countries can make 5 times more money. Really, there's no reason the Chinese per capita GDP is so small. If China has freedom, like all of us, it would be at least the same as Taiwan. There's no difference per capita GDP. Then all of a sudden you should be looking at 5 times of GDP today of China, because then the total GDP become much bigger. That means the world will make more money. America is really a capitalist. You know, Wall Street has so much money. They want to invest in China. But if you invest in the China that's a non-communist China, and if you can sell your product to a non-communist China, you make far more money than today. This is what I'm telling all the US big corporation, the big tech, Hollywood, and Wall Street. You think you are making good money, but without communism, you make at least 5 times more because you have a free China. And they love to work. And you are the capitalist. There's nothing wrong. US would invest, the Chinese will work. In the end, the standard of living comes up. This is what I hope in my lifetime. I'm 72. In my lifetime, it may happen. If the important thing is to get rid of the CCP.
Because right now, the CCP government is really using the debt to control most of the countries. So what's your solution? Tell me about that.
It's, you can call my imagination, but it's not. I've given a lot of thoughts. Unfortunately, Trump didn't make it, whatever reason we know. I said if the Trump administration, no, he's a businessman, he understands. The world, besides US, the world owes China about $5 trillion. And together with US and maybe Russia, maybe $10 trillion. So I am suggesting that US should take over all the debt from all these countries, little countries, African countries, South America, Central America, all these small countries, under 2 conditions. They'll be very grateful because if they're no longer a debtor, so they'll be very grateful. But you have to follow 2 conditions. That you have to give the power of attorney to US to go after China for the COVID reparation, all right? So I think the total damage in the world, including US and the rest of the world, would be about $30 trillion. You remember Donald Trump was talking about $10 trillion.
Right.
The worldwide, global is 30 trillion. So US should represent the world to go after, to sue. I mean, in US you can go to court and get rid of the so-called sovereign immunity. And you can also, US can also go on behalf of all these countries to ICJ, International Court of Justice, to sue that you have failed to inform the world about the spreading.
Right.
Late, you know, the rule is 24 hours. You must tell the whole world the virus is spreading. They took them 4 months or maybe even more, right? They discover actually in September. So October, November, December, January, February. Until March, they asked the WHO to call this a pandemic. Right? Delay. And delay is the biggest problem. You should put damage. Never mind you use it as a weapon or came from the lab or not. That's to be researched. But you delay in reporting to the world, and that's why you have to pay reparation. So US should represent all the countries to go to ICJ and US court and ask to freeze all the Chinese assets in the world, right? Freeze all their assets in the world, including those corrupted officials, because they stole from the state. The money belonged to the state, should all be frozen. All these nice apartments in New York, in San Francisco, all be frozen, all right? To be determined by court. whether you really have the rights or not. Where does the money come from? So they freeze globally all the Chinese asset, all the CCP asset. And the second condition for taking over the debt is you should give U.S. the power of attorney to vote in all international body for 3 years. So it means they can kick China out of UN and all the bodies, kick them out. So that way China will be totally isolated. And the condition for them to return to the international community and to pay off the debt in maybe longer years, you have to give up communism. You have to give up communism. If China give up communism, the economy will really boom. And they will be making so much money. And I believe they can, in the long term, they can pay back all that damage, the COVID damage. It's real. It's not imaginary. And this is what I believe is the solution. So far, I'm the only one talking. I have no power. Nobody knows me. So, but we have to find a solution. This is maybe one of the very remote. But people in Washington should think about a solution. Not just talking about complaining, this time meeting, that time G7 and then G20. All these meetings, there has to be substance. The substance is what is the solution. We have to get rid of the CCP. You don't get rid of them, they get rid of you. It's a cancer. We know that. The cancer is spreading through this one belt, one road, this and that, all these debts, they're spreading the cancer. It's as poisonous as the virus. The communism is you can see in California. It's totally infected with communist virus. Seriously, you can see that. Right. It's horrible. Yeah. So, I mean, you can call me whatever, a hawk or whatever it is. But that's the real, look at Hong Kong. That's the consequence. Yeah. Today, what's happening to Hong Kong, tomorrow can happen to San Francisco or to Taiwan.
Yeah, so according to your knowledge, because you talk to different people in the United States, how much awareness among the Americans, including those elected officials, what's really about the CCP?
I think we have not reached the level of awareness as after Pearl Harbor. Have not. All right? After Pearl Harbor, everybody recognized what kind of government, the Japanese government, the imperial military government is. We have not reached that level yet, but it's coming close. I always say Biden may not be a bad idea because under him, China will do more evil deeds, and people will wake up. I would say within next year, I think most USA, through its members of the parliament, parliament members I met, almost all the the congressmen in US, very angry with China. They know. But
so both parties or just one party?
In fact, both parties. But of course, the Democratic Party, they are kind of low key because party policy, party line, there's so much donation from those companies that's doing business in China. So they are very low key. But inside, they know who is behind it. So I believe that it will be shown in the next election, and then finally in the 2024 election, it will show up. And something may even happen before that, because the situation is really bad. Just look at Africa. Many more people will die. Afghanistan, sorry. Yeah. Many more people will die. And every day it's appearing in the news. People are looking at it more seriously than the COVID report. Suddenly, people are not paying attention to the COVID report. They're paying attention to this Afghan. It is serious. I mean, you can see a close-up. So this Afghan thing may be a wake-up call. Maybe a good wake-up call.
So to our audience, what do you think you want to tell them?
There has to be something fundamental. We need the Trump type of management for at least 2 terms, but unfortunately the law only gave him 1 more term. So we need at least 2 terms in order to make things right. It's such a corrupted government. I've been here total of 15 months, I've been in the United States. I mean, I dropped all my business, come to lobby, and I've been talking to so many people, and I understand. I become a specialist in understanding seriously. Luckily, most of the population still have this the traditional value, traditional American value. That is and the Constitution. These are the only two things that we can trust will bring America back. Hopefully, the system, the democratic system, and the congressmen will represent the people, and I think can turn the thing around. The only hope right now are the people and the Constitution. We must write the congressman. I tell all my so-called American Chinese friends, you must write the congressman, because they will value your idea. Concerning matters of Hong Kong and matters of China, your letter to the congressman will count a lot, because they know you know. It's not just from another American, but from a Chinese American. Talking to them about China, they really take it much more seriously, because they know you know. It's in your blood. So I would say these letters count. And they are looking for a way to fight CCP. And as an ordinary voter, a person, a citizen, you should write to your congressman about how you feel about it and what is the solution. It's a democratic process. It's slow, but eventually it's the most powerful system that the CCP, this is something they cannot fight. So I still have hope.
So how do you think of the observations and ideas that Elmer Yuen shared? Please leave your comments and share with us. If you liked the interview, remember to like, share the video, and subscribe to our channel. I'm Cathy Zhang. Thank you for watching.